they're not your enemy either. They're a function of the business. And like any function, they respond to incentives. Sometimes those incentives align with doing the right thing. Sometimes they don't. The key is knowing which situation you're in. I'm better at my job now than I was before. Not because of what I learned about production management, because of what I learned about organisational politics. How to document properly, when to escalate, when to get legal advice, how to protect yourself while staying professional. Those skills transfer everywhere. My team at the new company is smaller, 20 people instead of 43, but the relationships are stronger. Because I'm not constantly being undermined, because my authority is respected, because the environment is functional. It's remarkable what you can accomplish when you're not fighting just to do your job. I still believe in following procedure, even after everything, because when I followed procedure, it worked. Slowly, imperfectly, but it worked. The system isn't broken. People who don't follow it are the problem. And there are consequences for that, even if they come slowly. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just accepted HR's closure, if I'd filed a new complaint like they suggested, or stayed silent. I probably would have left eventually anyway, but without the settlement, without the documentation, without proving the point, I'm glad I didn't take that path. Not for the money, for the principle. Policies mean something, or they mean nothing. I proved which one it was. I saved my original complaint, every attachment, every email, every screenshot, created a folder on my personal laptop, backed it up twice. Then I reviewed the employee handbook again. Section 4.7 was explicit. Formal complaints required 3 stages. Stage 1. Initial review within 5 business days. Acknowledgement sent to complainant. Stage 2. Investigation within 15 business days. Written summary provided to complainant. Resolution plan documented. Stage 3. Monitoring period of 30 days. Follow-up meeting scheduled. Closure only after confirmed resolution. HR had completed Stage 1. They'd skipped Stage 2 entirely and closed the complaint without Stage 3. That violated their own policy. I documented the discrepancy, created a comparison chart, policy requirement versus actual action, clear gaps in every column. Then I waited. HR didn't respond to my email, not that day, not the next. I checked twice daily. Nothing. On the 3rd day, I sent a follow-up. Following up on my previous email regarding the complaint resolution process, please confirm receipt and provide the requested documentation. Still professional, still factual. No response. I continued my work, supervised my team, ran production schedules. My supervisor continued as before, countermanding my decisions, undermining my authority. But now I documented everything, every instance, every witness, every timestamp. I kept a detailed log, noted who was present, what was said, what action was taken. 1 week after the complaint closure, my supervisor reassigned one of my key projects. He announced it in the production meeting, didn't tell me beforehand. Rebecca's got enough on her plate. I'm moving the efficiency review to Martin. Martin was a junior supervisor, less experience, less knowledge of the process. I said nothing in the meeting. Afterward, I updated my documentation. Date, time, witnesses, impact on my role. Added it to the growing file. 2 weeks passed. HR still hadn't responded to either email. My supervisor's behaviour escalated. He started holding planning meetings without inviting me. I'd find out about decisions after they'd been implemented, changes to production schedules, equipment maintenance priorities, staff rotations, all things I was responsible for managing, all decided without my input. My team noticed. "Did you approve the schedule change?" one of my floor supervisors asked. "I wasn't consulted," I said. "But you're the production manager." "I know." He looked confused. "Should I follow it anyway?" "Follow the official schedule until I confirm otherwise." I documented that conversation too. 3 weeks after the complaint closure, I sent another email to HR. This time, I copied the HR director. "I've sent 2 requests for the required documentation per Section 4.7 of the Employee Handbook. I have not received a response. Please advise on when this information will be provided." The HR director responded within 2 hours. "Rebecca, I'll look into this and get back to you." That was all, but at least it was acknowledgement. The next day, Jennifer Caldwell called me. "Rebecca, I got your emails," she said. "I apologize for the delay in responding." I waited. "As I mentioned in the closure email, your supervisor apologized. We consider that sufficient resolution." "The handbook requires written documentation," I said. "We document all complaints," she said, "but the specific format depends on the complexity of the case." "What determines complexity?" "HR's professional judgment." "So you decided my case didn't require the standard process?" She paused. "The handbook provides guidelines, not absolute requirements. We have discretion in implementation." "Where does it say that?" Another pause. "It's implied in the policy framework." "I don't see that implication," I said. "I see specific requirements." "Rebecca, I understand you're frustrated, but your supervisor has apologized. We need to move forward." "Has the situation improved?" "Has it not?" "No," I said. "It's worse." "Then you should file a new complaint." I went very still. "A new complaint about the same behavior?" "If it's continuing, yes." "Shouldn't the monitoring period from the first complaint address that?" As I said, we closed the first complaint. "Without following procedure?" Her tone changed slightly. "Rebecca, I'm trying to help you, but you need to work with us." "I am working with you. I'm asking you to follow your own policy." "I don't think this conversation is productive. If you have ongoing concerns, file a new complaint." She hung up. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened a new document. I started researching. UK employment law, grievance procedures, employer obligations, ACAS codes of practice, statutory requirements. The company handbook referenced ACAS guidelines multiple times. I pulled the official ACAS code of practice on disciplinary and grievance procedures, read it carefully. ACAS required employers to follow their own written procedures. Failure to do so could result in tribunal findings against the employer. Compensation could be increased by up to 25% for procedural failures. I cross-referenced the handbook against the ACAS code. The handbook's 3-stage process aligned with ACAS recommendations, which meant the company had committed to following those standards, and then hadn't followed them. I documented that too. I didn't file a new complaint. Instead, I contacted a solicitor, an employment law specialist in Manchester. I explained the situation, sent the documentation. She reviewed everything, called me back 2 days later. "You have a strong case for failure to follow grievance procedures," she said. "What does that mean?" "It means if you were to bring a tribunal claim, you'd likely succeed on the procedural aspect alone. That doesn't even account for the underlying harassment and retaliation." "What would a tribunal award?" "Depends on many factors, but procedural failures strengthen your position significantly." "What should I do?" "You have options. You could raise a formal grievance again, noting the procedural failures. You could negotiate a settlement. Or you could resign and claim constructive dismissal." "What would you recommend?" "That depends on what you want. Do you want to stay at the company?" I thought about it. 8 years, good salary, pension contributions, familiar environment, but a supervisor who undermined me daily, HR that ignored policy, a director who'd likely back them both. I'm not sure, I said. Then document everything while you decide. If the situation deteriorates further, you'll have grounds for constructive dismissal. If they retaliate for raising concerns, you'll have additional claims. Thank you, I said. One more thing. Send one more formal request to HR for the grievance documentation. Make it clear you're requesting it under data protection rights as well. They can't ignore that. I drafted the email that evening. Dear Jennifer, I am formally requesting the following documentation related to case number GR-2024-1847, investigation summary and findings, resolution plan, monitoring schedule. I am requesting this both under Section 4.7 of the Employee Handbook and under my data protection rights per GDPR Article 15. Please provide this information within 30 days as required by law. Regards, Rebecca Torres. I sent it to Jennifer, copied the HR director, saved a copy. Then I waited. The response came 6 days later, from the HR director, not Jennifer. Dear Rebecca, we have reviewed your request. We can confirm that your grievance was investigated and resolved. However, as the complaint was resolved informally, no formal investigation summary was created. Regarding your data protection request, we will provide all personal data we hold about you within the statutory timeframe. If you have ongoing concerns about your working environment, please submit a new grievance through the appropriate channels. Best regards, Paul Henderson, HR Director. I read it 3 times. They were admitting there was no investigation, admitting they'd closed the complaint without following procedure, but framing it as informal resolution. The handbook had no provision for informal resolution of formal complaints. I forwarded the email to my solicitor. Her response was immediate. This is excellent documentation. They've essentially admitted the policy violation in writing. Save this carefully. My supervisor's behaviour continued to worsen. He started questioning my decisions publicly, in production meetings, in front of my team. Are you sure that's the right approach, Rebecca? Have you thought this through? Maybe we should get a second opinion. Undermining my authority systematically. I documented every instance. My team's morale declined. They were caught between following my instructions and watching me be overruled. 2 of my floor supervisors came to me privately. What's going on? One asked. Why is he doing this? I don't know, I said. Have you talked to HR? Yes. And? They're not helpful. He nodded slowly. That's rough. I appreciated his concern, but I couldn't say more. Segment 3. 5 weeks after the original complaint closure, I received the data protection response, a USB drive with all my personnel files. I reviewed everything. Performance reviews, training records, email archives, and the grievance file. It contained my original complaint, HR's acknowledgement email, and 1 internal note from Jennifer Caldwell. Spoke with Operations Director. He says this is a personality conflict. Rebecca is oversensitive to feedback. Recommend informal resolution through apology. No further action needed. That was the entire investigation. A conversation with my supervisor. No interview with me. No witness statements. No review of the documented incidents. Just his word that I was oversensitive. And HR had accepted it. I copied the file, sent it to my solicitor. She called me within the hour. This is remarkable, she said. They didn't investigate at all. They took the alleged harasser's word and closed the case. Is that unusual? It's a fundamental failure of procedure. Any tribunal would view this extremely negatively. What do I do? How's the situation at work? Getting worse. Can you tolerate it? For a while. Then keep documenting. Let's see if they make any other mistakes. The stronger your case, the better your settlement position. 6 weeks after the closure, my supervisor excluded me from the quarterly planning meeting. This was a meeting I'd attended for 8 years. A meeting where production targets were set, targets I was responsible for achieving. I only found out about it when I saw the calendar invite to other managers. I emailed my supervisor. I notice I wasn't included in the Q2 planning meeting. Is this an oversight? His response was brief. The meeting is for strategic planning, operations team only. I was part of the operations team. I was the production manager. I forwarded the exchange to my solicitor, added it to my documentation, waited. The next day, I received an email from HR, from Jennifer Caldwell. Rebecca, your supervisor has raised concerns about your engagement and performance. He'd like to schedule a performance improvement discussion. Please confirm your availability for next week. I stared at it. A performance improvement discussion. I'd received exceeds expectations on my last 3 annual reviews. My production metrics were the strongest in the facility. I'd had 0 performance concerns until I'd filed the grievance. This of retaliation. I forwarded the email to my solicitor without responding to Jennifer. My solicitor called me immediately. "This is it," she said. "This is clear retaliation. You filed a grievance, they closed it improperly, and you're there starting performance management. What do I do?" You have 2 choices. Fight it and likely face a drawn-out process that makes your life miserable, or negotiate an exit on your terms. What would an exit look like? Settlement agreement. They pay you to leave watching quietly. You on non-disclosure agreement. Both sides move on. How much would they pay? Based on your length of service, the production failures, the retaliation, and the potential tribunal claims, I'd start negotiations at 18 months' salary plus legal fees. I bird that you what expectations. If they're smart, yes. A terms would cost them more in legal fees alone, plus the reputational damage, plus potential awards. What do I need to doing? Respond to HR. Tell them you'd like to bring a representative to any performance discussion. Then about'll send them a letter outlining your legal position and society suggesting settlement discussions. I responding to Jennifer the decisions. I'm surprised by this request, given my strong performance history. I'd like to bring a legal representative to any discussion about my performance. Please let me know when this can be scheduled. Her response was quick. A legal representative isn't necessary for an informal discussion. I didn't respond. My solicitor sent her letter that afternoon. It was formal, detailed, professional. It outlined the grievance procedure failures, the ACAS code violations, the data protection findings, the retaliation pattern. It noted that I had strong grounds for tribunal claims, including failure to follow grievance procedures, harassment, and victimization. It suggested that settlement discussions might be in everyone's interest. It gave them 7 days to respond. 3 days later, the HR director called me. "Rebecca, I've received your solicitor's letter. I'd like to discuss this with you directly." "I'd prefer to communicate through my solicitor." "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not trying to..." I've documented everything, I said. I've followed policy. HR hasn't. Now you're starting performance management after I raised concerns. That's textbook retaliation. We simply want to address some issues your supervisor has raised. Issues that didn't exist until I filed a grievance. I'll speak with our legal team, he said finally. My solicitor is waiting to hear from you. I hung up. The following week, my solicitor called. They've agreed to settlement discussions. That was fast. They know they're exposed. Their legal team reviewed the file and saw the same problems I did. What happens now? We negotiate. I've proposed 18 months' salary, legal fees, and a neutral reference. They'll counteroffer. We'll settle somewhere in between. How long will it take? Usually a few weeks. These things move slowly. Okay. One more thing. Don't resign. Don't quit. Stay in position until the settlement is signed. If you leave, you lose leverage. The next 3 weeks were strange. I continued working. My supervisor continued undermining me, but HR stopped contacting me. The performance discussion was never scheduled. Everything was in holding pattern. I came to work, managed my team, documented issues, but everyone knew something was happening. My supervisor's hostility became more obvious. My team grew quieter. I maintained professional distance from everyone. Waited. 4 weeks after the settlement discussions began, my solicitor called. They've agreed to our terms: 12 months' salary, full legal fees, neutral reference, and expedited departure. Not 18 months? 12 is fair. It's substantial, and it gets you out quickly. When? You can resign effective immediately. They'll pay you through your notice period plus the settlement. You'll be done by end of month. I thought about it. 12 months' salary. Enough to take time. Find something better. Start fresh. What about the NDA? Standard language. You can't discuss the settlement or the circumstances, but it doesn't prevent you from speaking to future employers about your experience in general terms. And my reference? Neutral. Confirms dates, title, and that you left under a settlement agreement. Nothing negative. Okay. You're sure? Yes. I'll send you the final agreement to review. Take your time reading it. The settlement agreement arrived the next day. 23 pages of legal language. I read every word. The payment terms were clear. The confidentiality provisions were standard. The reference language was neutral. I signed it, scanned it back to my solicitor. Then I drafted my resignation letter. Dear Paul, I am writing to resign from my position as production manager, effective immediately per the terms of our settlement agreement. Thank you for the opportunities over the past 8 years. Regards, Rebecca Torres. Professional, brief, final. I sent it. Then I started packing my desk. I left the factory on a Friday afternoon. My team had been told I was leaving. No details, just that I'd accepted another opportunity. They seemed sad, confused. I shook hands, said polite goodbyes. My supervisor wasn't there. He'd taken the day off. The HR director met me at the exit. Rebecca, I'm sorry things worked out this way. I said nothing. I hope your next role is a better fit. I nodded. Thank you. I handed in my security pass, my keys, my laptop, walked to my car, drove away. The settlement payment cleared 2 weeks later. 12 months' salary, plus legal fees, plus accrued holiday pay. It was more money than I'd ever had at once. I paid off my car, put the rest in savings. Then I started looking for new roles. I took a month off first, rested, thought, planned. I realized how exhausted I'd been, not from the work, from the fighting, the constant documentation, the vigilance, the stress. I'd been living in survival mode for months. Now I could breathe. When I did start job hunting, I was selective. I looked for companies with strong HR practices, clear policies, good reputations. I asked careful questions in interviews. How do you handle workplace conflicts? What's your grievance procedure? How do you support managers? I could tell which companies took these questions seriously and which ones didn't. I accepted a new role 3 months after leaving. Different company, different industry, similar seniority. Better pay, better culture, better leadership. On my first day, the HR manager gave me a thorough orientation, explained policies, showed me the grievance procedure, outlined support systems. We take workplace issues seriously, she said. If you ever have concerns, please come to us. I believed her. Not because of what she said, but because the policy manual she showed me was detailed, specific, and clearly followed. I never spoke about what happened at my old company. The NDA prevented details anyway. But I didn't need to talk about it. I documented everything, fought properly, got fair compensation. That was enough. Sometimes I think about the irony. HR exists to protect the company from legal liability, but by failing to follow their own procedures, they created exactly the liability they were supposed to prevent. They saved themselves the trouble of a proper investigation, cost themselves 12 months of my salary plus legal fees. Poor risk management. I heard through industry contacts that my old supervisor left the company eventually. Different reasons, different circumstances. I felt nothing about it. Our paths had diverged. His choices had led him one direction, mine had led me another. The settlement money lasted me through the job search and then some. I used it wisely, invested most of it. It gave me security I hadn't had before, the freedom to be selective about my next move. That freedom was worth more than the money itself. I still keep documentation at work, not obsessively, just professionally. Important emails, project confirmations, performance feedback. Because I learned that policies only matter if someone enforces them. And sometimes that someone has to be you. My new company is different. When issues arise, they're addressed. When policies exist, they're followed. When employees raise concerns, they're heard. It's not perfect. Nowhere is. But at this functional. And after what I experienced, functional feels like luxury. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret the documentation, the solicitor, the settlement. I could have just quit, found another job, moved on. But that would have left the problem unsolved. They would have faced no consequences, learned nothing, done the same thing to the next person. At least this way, it cost them something. The hardest part wasn't the conflict. It was the waiting. The weeks of silence, the unanswered emails, the procedural delays. But that waiting built the case. Every ignored email was evidence. Every procedural failure was documentation. Every day they didn't follow policy strengthened my position. Patience wasn't just strategic, it was essential. I never went back to Manchester after I left. The new role was in Leeds, close enough to visit friends, far enough to feel like a fresh start. I sold my flat, found a new place, reset completely. People ask sometimes why I left my last role. I keep it simple. It was time for a change. They usually don't push, and you're due, I just say it was a mreven, which as technically true. We mutually agreed I should leave. You just had to pay me to agree. The employee handbook from my old company is still saved on my laptop. I keep it as a reminder.
Not of what happened, but of what to look for. Policies that sound good but aren't followed are worse than your policies at all. They create false confidence, make you think you're protected when you're not. My new employee handbook is different, shorter, clearer, more honest about what's actually enforceable. I pay about transparency. Better to know the real rules than looking on written ones that growth apply. I don't tell my current colleagues what about. There's no protecting. Settled. Done. What matters is building trust here, showing competence, demonstrating judgment, not dwelling on your about paths. The settlement agreement is locked in a file cabinet at home since I signed it. Don't need to. It served its purpose. Got me out, got me paid, work you closure. I learned something valuable from that experience. H. Quesant your friend.